from Senator Reinking.
I want you to imagine that it's 80 years ago, and we're having this meeting, only it would be in Russell because this building didn't exist. And we're forming the National Electricity Caucus because the arguments would be almost identical. Rural America without electricity couldn't function. And providing electricity to rural areas of America was a radical idea in the 1930s. And in fact, it took an act of Congress and the leadership of Franklin D. Roosevelt to create the Rural Electrification Program that brought the benefits of electricity to all of our country. Many of the arguments were the same. People lived too far apart, it was too expensive, the wires had to be too long, there were too many poles, we can't serve these regions of the country. We would not be able to function as a country without rural electrification. This is exactly the same issue. It's exactly the same issue. Failure to provide broadband to rural areas of America is a death. This is really a nice house, but by the way, you can never have water here. Or what happens is, by the way, there's no broadband. I would argue that many people will say, sorry, I can't live in that house, particularly younger people, for whom access to the internet and to access to the world through broadband is such a basic part of their daily lives. So we don't have a particular legislative agenda, except that we want to see, number one, coordination of federal efforts in this area. We want to see that what we can do to bring together the various resources, because we've got the Department of Agriculture, we've got the Small Business Administration, we've got the Commerce Department, we've got the FCC. There are many ways this problem is being dealt with across the federal government, but we believe that there has to be some coordinated national strategy. This is urgent. This is urgent. Businesses are leaving rural areas today, and people are failing to move into rural areas today because of their lack of access. Ironically, this is happening at a time when the development of the internet allows a resurgence of rural areas. For the first time in human history, you can work where you live instead of having to live where you work. It creates enormous opportunities for rural areas of our country, which, after all, are wonderful places to live. And people looking to change their lifestyle and enjoy those regions, but the necessary requirement in order to make that happen is decent broadband. And so that's really what we're talking about today. I consider this a very high priority, a very important issue, and as Senator Capito mentioned, it also involves in the 21st century. So with that, I want to welcome my colleague from North Dakota, another state that has large rural areas. And by the way, I think I can't emphasize enough that the rural areas of our country have so much to offer to their residents. And this one little missing piece we have to plug in order to complete the picture of having a vibrant and vital economic sector, because there's so many contributions that can be made, and people often want to live away from urban areas, but we have to be sure that they can get the basic infrastructure necessary to do so. Senator Hyken.
Thank you. Well, what a great turnout. Thanks for coming to what I hope will be one of the most significant and active caucuses in the United States Senate. Why is that? Because we can't survive in rural areas without broadband. We cannot continue to lose population to metro. Why can't we do this? And I use this example, and I use it quite a bit. I said, until we figure out a way that every American citizen can stream Netflix, there'll be portions of our economy that are going to fail. There'll be portions of our state that are not going to survive. Because where we used to talk about whether people want to live in rural areas, whether they could get a pizza delivered, we now now talk about whether they can watch, Orange is the New Black, or whether they can watch Game of whatever. But my point is that as we have built out this opportunity, Fargo, right? As we built out this opportunity to grow rural America, which suffers at much higher rates of poverty than urban America. It's something that goes untalked about. And Amy just did a great roundtable where we brought in experts from all over talking about rural poverty. This issue always comes to the front. This issue is always number one. And it goes beyond, I say, streaming Netflix kind of facetiously, but I will tell you, think about a critical access hospital that cannot afford to keep a doctor on call, but needs to provide emergency medicine. How are you going to do that without telemedicine? And how are you going to do telemedicine without broadband? Think about a school where you can't get a high school Spanish teacher, because there's only 3 kids maybe in the graduating class, or maybe 2 kids who want to study Spanish. This resource allows us to do amazing things in rural America. If you walk through, we've got a couple centers in North Dakota. One is an Amazon customer service center in Grand Forks. If you walk through Aetna, which is a service center for an insurance company in Bismarck, and you see half of the desks are empty. And the management is quick to say, that doesn't mean people aren't working. Those desks used to be filled by people who now live in Napoleon and work from home. Those desks used to be filled by people who live in Minto and now work from home. They don't commute to work. And we find out they're even that much more productive because they don't have to brave the weather. But without broadband, you cannot get this done. And the final point I want to make is the numbers. And we've been talking a lot about this. Well, we did a hearing on broadband access in the Indian Affairs Committee. What you heard is varying degrees and differences about what it means to have access. Does it mean economic access, that you can afford it? Does it mean that you actually have a wire that comes to your house or thick fiber that comes to your house? We don't know about what this need is and how we fulfill that need. And we have to build on partnerships. And the last thing I'm going to say is about some of my friends at a couple internet service provider companies, one in particular, which is very active in North Dakota, South Dakota company. Won't mention the name. But they've done something that a lot of other companies haven't done. For $10 a month, they will bring in Wi-Fi, a router and a modem, into a home just for $10 a month. And they've even bought computers for kids who are impoverished will fall further and further behind. So it's not just about having the wire there. It's how can they access that wire and how much does that cost? So there's economic access and there's physical access. We need to be realistic about what we know right now so we can fill in the gaps. And just as Angus said, as he stole my entry line, say, when Shelley's great work here and the rest of us joining together in the caucus, we aren't going to shine that big light that's going to say how important and critical this is. And so I know not only do I share a passion for this with my neighbor to the east, but I share a big border. It's called the Red River. And Amy, I know she feels just as passionately about this, but don't forget disadvantaged communities when we're talking about this. Thank you so much. Leave your stuff here. You bet.
Well, thank you so much, Heidi. Thank you, everyone. And it's really exciting to do this. I like the logo, Shelley. Very cool. And it's such a great group of senators with Senator King and my neighbor, Commissioner Wireless Association, CTIA, Engine Advocacy, and Caucus, Next Century Cities, the National Cable and Telecom Association, the World Broadband Association, U.S. Telecom. And we've been really jump-starting our efforts lately. And that is because of what I said at the beginning. We have literally farmers and small businesses now that every single day they drive 20 miles to the McDonald's parking lot to do their work. That's how they start the day. I'm sure they like an Egg McMuffin, but that's not why they go there. They go there because it's the only way for them to have high-speed access and to be able to download the things that they want to download. We have one company in western Minnesota that actually, to connect up with to ask cities and other entities when they dig out for highway projects that they also use that opportunity to put in the fiber and just the work that needs to be done with the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Rural Utility Service and others. So I'm actually excited just because because we have not seen this kind of interest for a long, long time, really since we did the stimulus bill. I was just on Friday out in Winthrop, Minnesota, where they're courting a medical school. Don't tell anyone. And they're just closing the deal because we don't have enough doctors in rural parts of our country. And the meeting was a little bit about that, but it was mostly about broadband. And that town itself has good Wi-Fi, but they want to connect all of the surrounding counties and townships so everyone can join in this as well.
To the House, Public Works, but used to in the old days, you think of public works, you think of transportation infrastructure in terms of roads and bridges, interstates, all of those kind of things are navigable waters. Now we simply have to think in terms of, along with that, broadband, having the ability to get online. If you don't have that ability, you simply are not going to have the economy, the area is not going to thrive, because that's become such an integral part of our society. And the amazing thing is how quickly that's done. Some of us, in fact most of us, that simply was not a factor in our lives at all, and now it's just an integral part of our lives. So that's really what this is all about, is us working together, and I appreciate all the industry that's here, your support, trying to get the job done. It's amazing, the numbers here, but I think in much of Arkansas, in much of rural Arkansas, it's closer to 8.
What do you do about the woman who doesn't have access? They say everybody has to sign up. You have to sign up. And sign up online. Just go to our website like it's, peas and carrots, as Forrest Gump would say. And so, it's not so simple. So that's another dimension, I think, is the first responder response, FEMA, and other vital services coming in quickly to a very damaged community. So with that, I want to thank my colleagues. Everybody's had a good perspective, I think, on what we're going to do. We're going to have another rollout or concentration in September. We haven't quite decided what we're going to do, what direction we're going to say. I would like to thank Victoria Flood in my office. She has done a wonderful job. She can take credit for this and all the other